Today on the very cluttered workbench, we have a Christmas Ferris wheel. This is just a generic Chinese Ferris wheel. There's no brand on it at all. This is part of an outdoor display, and unfortunately, it didn't get covered quick enough before the rains came. So, we're going to see if we can get this thing to function at all. It's been having intermittent issues. The wheel no longer spins under its own power. The lights are intermittent, and the sound sounds like you're choking a chicken to death. It's really, really horrible. It's had a chance to dry out, and we're going to see what happens. So on the back, we have alright, it's on, but see, nothing's happening. Oh, there we go. And there we go, now the lights are starting to flash. You can hear it sounds pretty bad. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. So, we're gonna open it up and see if we can get the sound to work better and hopefully the Ferris wheel to spin. Now this one's different than other manufacturers. A lot of manufacturers have the spinning mechanism on the axle, so it spins the wheel from the axle. This one kind of reminds me of the old bicycle headlight, taillight assemblies. The motor actually is attached here, and it has there's probably rubber at one point. Now it's kind of a vulcanized plastic that runs on this outer edge of the wheel, and you might be able to see that the wheel is no longer silver from this thing spinning on it, and that's how it's supposed to spin the Ferris wheel. Motor isn't turning, so the motor could be bad, could be a broken wire inside the arm, but we are going to attempt to open this thing up and see what we can do to get it back to its display, since Christmas is in less than 10 days. So stay tuned and we will tear into this bad boy. Alright, this thing disassembles from the top. There are at least 2 screws right here. There are no screws on the bottom that I can find. And it's a Maisto, I forgot how to pronounce it. They make models. M-A-I-S-T-O is the manufacturer. And it is made in China. See any other screws. Sorry if it's making the camera wiggle. This thing is actually really large. It's a lot larger than Limax and Department 56. But you gotta have some screws up front here. I'm assuming they're underneath the stands. All these black stands used to have lights in them, and because this is an outside display, weather gets to it and they snap off. So we're going to glue this one back on right here, so the entrance has two stands, 2 light poles. Sorry. Whew. All right, there we go. So once I get this back to the owner, I'm hoping to get a good video of his display. He owns probably close to 2,000 Christmas and Halloween miniature houses, from Department 56 to Limax to generic unbranded Hawthorne Village, and apparently Maisto. He has a very, very large display, and again, it's an outside display, and we live in the desert. So we go from extreme heat to extreme cold and rain. Oh yeah, look at that. Well, you can tell it's got water in it, and it is severely corroded on the circuit board. Only thing on the bottom of this, besides the bosses for the screws, are 2 spots where the wires go through for the motor, and the Christmas light. It says Merry Christmas on the front of the Ferris wheel. So, I don't feel like cutting or desoldering those wires, so I'm going to try and get this in enough light that you can see it, since this Ferris wheel is casting one hell of a shadow. And so, we're going to see if any of the discrete components are damaged, and it could just be having some issues because the corrosion is causing a small short or a high resistive short between terminals. And we're going to scrub the circuit board, and then we're going to coat the circuit board, if we can get it to work, with liquid electrical tape to help seal it from moisture. The bottom of the circuit board looks beautiful. That's because the rain is coming down through the screw holes and the plastic bosses for the clips to hold everything on the top. So it's just dripping right on the back of the circuit board. The back, all the capacitors look good. I don't see any burned diodes or resistors. Sorry, brain stopped for a second. Fuse looks good, but my eyes aren't as great as they used to be, so we're gonna ohm check this bad boy, make sure we still got good resistance across the fuse. Anybody's ever done this should know, but if you don't, if you have a multimeter, put it on ohms, and then one side touch and the other side, and I have 0.3 ohms of resistance. If you do it like this, it's going to read, right now it says there's 4.3 megohms. It's going through my thumbs. So whenever you test a fuse outside of its holder, which is the recommended way, is to just touch one side with your hand. It's a 0.8 amp fuse, in case you're wondering, because it's just printed on the board, and it is a good fuse. I'm gathering it would have been a good fuse, since it does try and work. There's many different things you can use to clean the circuit board. There are circuit board cleaning chemicals. Personally, I try to use rubbing alcohol to start. Rubbing alcohol will not only remove some of the corrosion, it removes any greases and oils, and it evaporates virtually clean where there's no residue. Rubbing alcohol is a really good all-around general purpose, cleanser, sanitizer, etc. So I'm gonna go grab some alcohol and a old toothbrush, and I'm gonna clean this board up, and then we're gonna plug it back in and see if it works. I didn't mention it before, but this is a 9-volt unit, so that AC adapter that plugs in here is 9 volts. If you have Limax or Department 56, this size adapter is generally a 4.5 volt. So this one won't run on a standard adapter. Make sure that if you do have components like this, that you get the correct power for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this, and we're going to try it again. And I'm probably going to end up just putting direct power to the motor and see if I can get the motor to spin at all. I'm assuming this fuse is for the motor. Let me trace the tracks. Alright, this is the LED. These are the motor. Track. Okay, yeah, the fuse that's on here goes to the transistor, which then goes through the resistor and 2 Zener diodes, then it goes to the motor. Probably because the motor spins in both directions, and it's to help it go in one direction only. It should be a DC motor, but usually hobby motors can be forward or backwards, so it's probably a unidirectional motor. Anyhow, I'm going to clean this all up. I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch me do that, because it's about as fun as watching paint dry. And then we're going to fire it back up. So, be back in a moment. Okay. As you can see, I did clean off the board, and the speaker is blown. When I cleaned off the board, I tested it real quick, and this speaker got real loud. And if you know how to, if you lightly push on the cone of a speaker, if it sounds like it's full of sand or it's scratchy, bad cone. Once I cleaned the circuitry, this speaker got real annoying. So I got a more, it's a slightly smaller speaker. It's louder at full volume, but it's sealed. It's designed, it came from a little portable outdoor television that you could plug into a cigarette lighter in your car, or plug it into a power bank and then put it by your campfire, and also ran on a dozen batteries. It took like 9 D batteries. Anyhow, that's why it's sealed in plastic like this, is because it was designed to handle some of the elements. And as you can hear, it doesn't sound all like crap anymore. Just vibrating a little bit on the plastic, but that's it. So, and you can see the circuit board actually says Maisto, or I forgot how to pronounce it, but not a big deal at the moment. So, the lights now work, the speaker works. The motor, which are these wires right here, is getting 2.5 volts. That motor is not spinning. So I'm going to remove this speaker, mount this in its place, clean up the twisted wires for testing, and then I'm going to take the motor off, and we're going to see if the motor is just bad, which it probably is, it was in the rain, or if it's got an internal break. One of these wires going up through the platform is broke up inside the arm, which is over here, or if we can replace it and make it function whatsoever, we're going to do what we can so we can get this back to its display. And then hopefully in the near future, I'll get a long footage of his display of his Christmas town, which, if I remember right, he said he's got just over 1,000 houses. So it is a huge, huge miniature display. Matter of fact, it was so big, Department 56's president came out 2 years ago to come and look at it. So we're not talking little. And some of the houses, if you're a collector of these miniature houses, know that they're expensive, and he's got houses in his display that are on eBay currently for $300 and $400. But he does it to make people happy. People love it, and he does it both for Christmas and Halloween. So maybe next year I can get some footage of his Halloween display, because it's just as big. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this, put the base back down, and we're going to take the motor off. So instead of keeping you here while I take care of this, which is just dead time work, I'll be back in a minute. Alright, I removed the back of the motor right there, and I have the leads from the power supply. Whew, one of those days. Hooked up to it. I unscrewed the front of the transmission, which is really hard to see, because again, the size of this thing is just doesn't fit so well on my bench. It's right here. I was stuck the screwdriver through the spokes, got the top screw, and then got the bottom. The motor actually is trying to spin, and it was pulling about 3.35 amps, a third of an amp. That's a lot of power for this little motor, which is probably why the lights were flickering, because the power draw. Because the lights don't flicker anymore on the front display. They flash and go through their colors, but they're not flickery, and which may not show up on the camera, and they're not intermittent lights. Anyway, once I took the transmission off, which is a very basic transmission, the motor started spinning, and it dropped from 0.35 amps to about 0.05. That's a heck of a difference. Anyhow, I'm going to turn the motor on. I have it at 2.5 volts, and then I have it pulled down because this is adjustable for tension. I don't know if you can hear it turning. I'm going to push it up, and there you go. The reason it doesn't work, there's no lubrication left in the transmission. It was seized, which is why the motor was pulling so much power. Right now, with no load, I am pulling 0.05, and when I put a load on it, it's at 0.08, 0.09. It's bouncing back and forth, so it's less than a tenth of an amp now that the transmission spins. I have not lubricated it yet. I am going to. I'm going to put some probably white lithium grease in here, something that is water repellent. It doesn't allow water to permeate with inside of it. The oils, I normally like to use oils like for gun lubricants, because they work really good, but they will wash away in water. Use a petroleum jelly grease or a lithium grease. Water has a hard time permeating into it. Since this is an outside display, I gotta change the way I do things. So I'm going to lube up the transmission, which I'll pull the face off so you can see. This is it. You can see that piece of rubber right there. That black ring. It's a friction transmission. The shaft of the motor runs against the edge of this, and just the tension, the friction, is what turns that wheel. The problem is this shaft goes into a boss, and it was stuck. I had to break it free. When I was spinning this, I thought I was spinning the entire insert. I was spinning this piece of rubber on the inner shaft. I was not spinning the actual metal axle. So, and I'm going to, here's the cap. It's held on with one screw. This is what covers the motor. I'm going to put a bead of, I'm not going to put grease in here because unfortunately some of the greases are conductive. Probably going to end up putting a dab of liquid electrical tape or hot glue and squeeze it on. It's going to make it really hard to take it off in the future, I'm not going to lie, but it should hopefully seal it. But I'm going to clean all the dirt out of it, out of the inside of this transmission right here, blow it out, clean the motor housing. You can see it comes out a little bit. I have to loosen the wires up to get it to come all the way out. I'm going to go ahead and put a little grease on the axle, just the axle. I don't want any grease on that piece of black rubber, or else it's not going to have the friction it needs to spin this big old wheel. And then looking at how this works, I'm going to see if I can get these caps off and put a dab of grease. It spins freely, but I can hear it. Then we're going to reassemble this part, plug it in, make sure it works on its own power, and then it can go back to its display. This one's a pretty basic one, not too much. Just some water corrosion. I still got to seal the circuit board, and I did as you. And then I just used 91% rubbing alcohol, whoops, and an old toothbrush. That's how I clean the circuit board. Got rid of any shorts. Before I forget, here's the old speaker. The cone's intact. There's no punctures, but I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. That brushing, scratching sound is it's a bad cone. So yeah, it should not sound like that. So that goes into the 86 bin. Alright, so I'm going to get this lubed up, sealed up, screwed back together, and I'm going to do one final full function run test. Music, spinning wheel, flashing lights. So stay tuned for the conclusion. Circuit board covered in liquid electrical tape, so that way it should be more water resistant after it's been scrubbed. All the contacts are good. It's not quite dry. It's a little tacky. It's going to take another 15 minutes or so to completely dry. There's the speaker. I didn't have any long enough screws, so it's hot glued in place. Once the hot glue cures, it's good. And then here's the bottom, since it's hard to see on the desk cam. These are the wires for the light. These are the wires for the motor. And then I sealed the speaker wires. They're soldered and then heat shrunk. This does run on batteries. This here is the battery pack. There's the 2 batteries. So it takes 6 batteries, or you can use the AC adapter right there. I did not coat the bottom of the board since water has never dripped on it. Just the top, which technically would be the bottom on most things. So, alright, we're going to let this cure, put it back together, and get footage of it completely assembled and working. Alright, from the Random Junk channel, Merry Christmas. See you next year.